then the inspiration very much kind of falls into your storytelling abilities. But I know, like for me, the storytelling abilities is your ability to edit the collection and put, I'm trying to think of, so when you go in, sometimes you work with the designers from, like when I worked with Costello, we worked from 6 months ahead of time. I worked with them from conception to the show. And then from other people I work with, Victoria, I've also worked, Victoria Beckham, I also worked from, you know, the beginning and edit with her from the beginning of the conception of the collection to the show. And then there's some other designers who like bring me in for like the 8 days before. So I don't really I'm not really part of the design process, but I'm there to make a story. It's like the other thing with the consultancy. They like put me in a room with clothes and like make it a story. You know, like get some inspiration. And also it's like the trick, or you look at the clothes and you make an assessment of the clothes and it's like, what inspiration can I come up with these clothes? Like what can I pull from? I was doing this Canadian brand called Macaj. Do you know that brand? Yeah. And you know, it's coats. It's a whole room of coats. And then it was like, make something, you know, and it's like, okay. And I started to look at it and there was like all these, these different detailings, leather detailing, and I got obsessed with Corinne. I mean, I'm always obsessed with Corinne Rotfield, but the editor-in-chief, or the ex-editor-in-chief of French Vogue. And so I made the whole collection into her because it was almost all black leather, kind of super chic trenches and things like that. So I started to think of like, okay, I started to build the whole thing like around what would Corinne do? Like what would Corinne wear? And it was like a really fun game because it became really clear like Corinne would not wear this. You know, and I'd be sitting there looking at a look and I'd be like, no, Corinne would not wear this. And it became this really fun game for me and my assistants. And I did a whole bunch of research inspiration presentations for the designers and said that, this is Corinne. They're like, who? And I'm like, this is who? And this is what she looks like. And this is and this is how amazing. And look at her outfits. And we did all of her like snapshots from backstage and stuff and parties. And they're like, oh my God, she's amazing. We love it. And they're French Canadian, so it's like the French thing. So it was great. And it just made it really easy for us to hone in on the story. And then inside of that kind of story that we created, there was, you tell a story with the order that you put this collection in. So like the old school way of doing it, that's like very kind of old 1950s salon, is starting from like day to night. And I think that there's ways to play with that. Like I have so much respect for Balenciaga and Nicolas Ghesquière and Marie-Amélie for how that they do the Balenciaga show. If you take a look at it on style.com or vogue.com, they completely changed, they changed a couple things. Before they started doing show, like when he started doing Balenciaga in Paris again, they started showing like 40 looks. And at that point, people were still showing 100 looks. And that's a lot of looks. I mean, it's like the 80s and the 90s where it's like you would sit through a 30-minute fashion show, and now they're like 12 minutes. And so I just like that Balenciaga and Nicolas Ghesquière and Marie-Amélie, they honed everything in. And they were telling a really edited, tight story. And it was just so much more exciting for some reason. And like, I do like it when every once in a while, Marc will do a show, Marc Jacobs will do a show, and there'll be 60 to 70 looks, but you love every look. And you're just like, oh my God, what's gonna come out next? Like, that's a storyteller. It's like it transitions and it goes in and it goes up and then it has neutral palette for a little bit, and like he'll do a neutral palette with something like the Nurses or whatever. It's like he'll start with the Nurses, so you have this exciting thing in the beginning when he did that for Vuitton, the Richard Prince collection. And then he'll go into the collection and then, it'll be kind of funny day wear, and then, I mean, it always kind of ends on an evening note, but then the thing I love about Balenciaga is they don't do evening. Like it'll be a couple dresses. So in the storytelling, it's the order you put it out, it's the girl who's in what look tells a story. The casting is a huge thing. I mean, hair and makeup is a huge part of the story you're telling. Huge. Like, when we were doing the Corinne thing, we had all the girls have these crazy side, like really, really dark, and so they all had like their hair and their eye over one side like Corinne always does. And like a super greasy black, I mean, we did an exaggerated version of her, and they look so great. And you can just really drive home who the woman is or who the man is through the full elements. But that's what's so important for us to know our voice and to know the client's voice and then to hold it. Because sometimes a hair or makeup person will come in, they have their own agenda. Or sometimes they just didn't get the communication of what you're doing, and they're like on another planet about it. And it's like you gotta, without hurting their feelings or disempowering them or hurting their creativity, you gotta bring them back in and be like, okay, this is a story. Like, this is what we're doing, what do you think? And the great thing about when you get to a certain level, you can work with the best hair and makeup teams and the best casting directors in the world, and just, you don't even have to say anything. You don't even have to say like side part, like you just say Karine, and then they do this amazing version of it that you could never have even imagined. And that's kind of like the exciting thing about moving up, in styling, is that you suddenly get to work with like the Guidos and the Pat McGraths and the DDA and Malaysias who, I mean, when you just tell them like, oh, this is the character, they get it. You don't have to tell them what kind of hair and makeup you want. They just do it. And it becomes a real collaboration at that point. But as you're growing up together and you're working with your generation, it's like you push it. And you kind of push them and they push back at you and you collaborate and you learn together. And then when you start working with the big guys, it's like a whole nother ballgame.